What's up, YouTube? Today we're going to be looking at the Hisui Cup once again, and the team that we're going to be taking a look at today is Gastrodon, Wormadam Trash, and Shadow BIBAREL as our closer. Now, surprisingly, even though Gastrodon and BIBAREL are both water types in this meta, they cover each other's weaknesses fairly well, especially when you think about Pokemon like Drifblim, where Gastrodon is typically completely walled when it runs Mud Slap, Body Slam, and Earth Power. But with BIBAREL as a normal water type, it completely walls the moveset of Drifblim. So very unique coverage there. And then Wormadam Trash just as our bulky safe swap. We're running Metal Sound over Bug Bite because on the Sims, Metal Sound actually performs better. So without further ado, let's take a look at some battles. A special thank you to the Legend Trainer members on this channel, Big Burden, Andropitten, Moosechew, and Noodleman. Let's hop into his battles. Alright. Gastrodon into Dusknoir. This is a neutral lead, so I'm just going to stay in this matchup because you're going to pace pretty slow with Astonish. I know I can't survive any charge move here, even a Dynamic Punch. They do actually full send the Dynamic Punch. I'm watching for a catch, which is why you see me overfarming as much as I can. And now I'm just going to go for the Water Pulse to at least grab that shield from my opponent. And we do put them in the yellow health range. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with my BIBAREL. BIBAREL, of course, will have to shield up a charge move here because a Dynamic Punch would be super effective. And now in comes Spiritomb. Spiritomb will be met with a Surf before I pivot into my Wormadam. Surf does grab a shield from my opponent, which means they have no shields left in play. So no matter what they go for here, I'm going to let it go. I'm saving my shields for my BIBAREL. It's a Shadow Ball. They actually full send a charge move there. I'm now going to overfarm as much as I can, going for the Bug Buzz to pick up the knockout on the Spiritomb. This is neutral damage. It would be resistant on Bug, but super effective on Dark, netting neutral damage. Are they going to come back in with the Dusknoir, or are they going to come in with their third? They're actually going to show us their third, and their third is a Gastrodon. So this is where it's nice having Metal Sound and Iron Head, because this is actually neutral damage, and now I can pivot into my BIBAREL. I'm watching for the catch. My opponent ends up going for the catch exactly when I go for my charge move. I've tried to throw on the CMP tie, but they make that read perfectly. That's honestly okay for me because the Dusknoir did have some residual energy, and now I can make it to the back-to-back Surfs before my opponent is able to make it to the back-to-back charge moves or a Smackdown Farm Down. So here comes Surf number 1, and now Surf number 2 will pick up the knockout on the Gastrodon, and we are able to take game 1 win. Into the next match, terrible lead, Gastrodon into Staraptor. We're going to safe switch into our Wormadam, and we get pretty much hard countered here with a Gastrodon on the safe switch. Now, of course, this is a matchup where it would be better to have Bug Bite, but likely the opponent wouldn't have switched out of the lead matchup if they saw that I came in with a Wormadam on Bug Bite. So either way, I am going to shield this up, expecting my opponent to full send the charge move there. Going for a Body Slam bait would be very strange there. And now I'm going to go for the Bug Buzz to at least grab a shield for my opponent or grab switch. I do grab a shield and we get the defense drop, which is pretty nice. And now that I've taken this into the one shield scenario, I am fine letting this go. And now in comes Gastrodon. Gastrodon will get a full Mud Slap farm down. And I'm going to instantly pivot into my BIBAREL, and they have their own BIBAREL in the back. But we have an energy lead, and this is where having an energy lead is super important because Hyper Fang will do massive damage to the opponent, especially from the Shadow BIBAREL. They are going to shield that up, but I'm going to shield right back. They end up baiting with a Surf. That doesn't really help them too much in this matchup because that would only let them get to a second Surf faster. That said, that connects. This should only be enough for a Surf, so we know we can survive this. And now it's just about whether we can live the Gust in order to get to a charge move here, and unfortunately we cannot. The Gust picks up the knockout. Are they going to beat us to a charge move? They are. But I believe this is only enough for a Fly, not a Close Combat or a Brave Bird. It is just a Fly. One more Mud Slap. We get to the Water Pulse. Now Staraptor is extremely glassy. Can they live a Water Pulse from this range? They cannot. And that's a reason why we're running Water Pulse right there. Otherwise, we would have been walled. We would have had to go for a Body Slam spam, and we would have lost that game. Another terrible lead, Togekiss on the lead. We're going to safe switch into our Wormadam because we have two better answers in the back, and no surprise, we are answered with a Mud Slap Gastrodon in the back. Gastrodon will be met now with a Bug Buzz. We actually grab a shield from my opponent and we get the defense fall. So now I'm thinking, you know what? I think if I can outpace to another Bug Buzz, I can probably pick up the knockout with another move here. So I am going to go for the Bug Buzz. My opponent looks like they might have been lagging there. I'm not sure if that was a visual glitch or if they were actually lagging. But now here comes a Bug Buzz. My opponent double shields that. We get 2 defense falls, and I end up throwing on the CMP tie, but I have the shield. So I can commit the shield and flip switch here if I want. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Here comes a 3rd Bug Buzz, pacing pretty quickly with the Wormadam Trash now on Metal Sound. And now in comes Spiritomb. Can I make it to another Bug Buzz? I can. That is absolutely massive. There are no shields left in play. Here comes, I think, the 4th Bug Buzz of the match, and we get another defense fall. Luck absolutely going our way, and now we have the alignment that we need. The barrel going to be aligned against the Togekiss. Obviously, these charms are still neutral, so I will throw the Surf as soon as I get to it. That picks up the knockout. In comes the Spiritomb. They have the move loaded, but as soon as they empty their energy here, I know I can just come in with the Gastrodon, get them full Mud Slap, farm down, and we are able to take that win. Okay, into the next match, Gastrodon into Drapion. Finally a good lead after 3 not so great leads. My opponent is going to save switch into a Gastrodon, and I don't have a good response to Gastrodon in the back, but because they switched, they should actually get 1 turn switch there, and I should be able to outpace by 1 turn, but unfortunately, somehow I lagged or they got 0 turn switch, which is not how the game should work, but they actually win CMP. That allows them to get the full farm down at the exact same time instead of me getting the alignment that I need, even though I should have got that. My Mud Slap should have registered first, which means I should have been able to take them out before they took me out. And now they have perfect alignment where we would have had perfect alignment. I would have had my Bibarel on their Drifblim and my Wormadam on their Drapion, and this game would have been so over. But now it's Drapion on my Bibarel and Drifblim on my Wormadam. Fortunately, at least we're on Metal Sound, so it's not an absolutely game over scenario, but it is incredibly annoying. I am going to shield both charge moves from my from the Drapion because I basically need all the health that I can get on my Bibarel, because I wall all of their moves otherwise on the Drifblim. Can I get to another charge move? I cannot. I'm going to wait the turn after throwing a rollout, getting the catch of the crunch onto my Wormadam. That is absolutely massive. They get the defense fall. That's a 20% chance, by the way. I end up going for the Iron Head as soon as I get to it because the opponent would have made it to a crunch if I didn't. And my opponent ends up catching it onto their Drifblim, but that's fine. They're going to be forced to throw energy in order to pick up the knockout here. It is just the Icy Wind, but that's actually a really nice play by my opponent because they get the farm down and actually doesn't quite let them get to another move, which is absolutely massive because Bibarel wins CMP in this matchup, and all they had loaded was an Aqua Tail. So Surf picks up the knockout on the Drapion, and despite the lag and the alignment switch, we are still able to take that win. Another good lead, Gastrodon into Lucario. They're going to save switch into Spiritomb, and I don't have a great response to Spiritomb, so I'm actually going to stay in this matchup and chip with a Water Pulse. The opponent ends up beating me to the charge move. I will commit the shield. It is the Shadow Ball, and now here comes a Water Pulse. Water Pulse is, of course, neutral damage, and after these Mud Slaps, it will actually be enough to pick up the knockout on the Spiritomb. Are they going to come back with a Lucario is the question. If they do not, I'm going to be pivoting here. It's a Drifblim. I'm going to pivot into my Bibarel. And you might be thinking, that's kind of a weird play. You know they have a Lucario on the lead. However, most Lucarios are actually running Bullet Punch in this meta, which is resisted on the water typing of Bibarel, and that is instantly confirmed when my opponent comes back with the Lucario. They're already down energy. They end up making it to a charge move on 5, which means this can only be a power up punch, and I don't think that's going to be enough to KO. Actually, it's super effective. It still picks up the knockout on the glassy Shadow Bibarel, but that allows me to outpace and make it to a Water Pulse against the Lucario that picks up the knockout, and now in comes Wormadam. All we have to do here is make it to back-to-back Metal Sounds before my opponent can make it to 2 Shadow Balls. I will respect the first, hoping that my opponent doesn't go for the bait, and they do full send the Shadow Ball. That is absolutely massive. Now here comes an Iron Head, and now I'm 1 away from another Iron Head, and my opponent is 1 Astonish away from a Shadow Ball. So being able to outpace here, make it to the Iron Head, this will be enough to pick up the knockout on the Drifblim, and we are able to take that win. Yeah, being able to read that Bibarel switch into the Drifblim was honestly huge because I expected the Lucario to be on the Bullet Punch, and once again, proving my point. A terrible lead, Gastrodon and Drifblim. I safe switch into Wormadam, and they have a Lucario in the back. So unfortunately here, there's not much I can do to flip switch. I have Metal Sound and Iron Head, which are only single resisted as opposed to double resisted, like Bug Buzz and Bug Bite would be. So at least this matchup is a little bit better because of that, but it's still not great. My opponent ends up overfarming by a little bit too much, allowing me to make it to a second charge move before they make it to a second charge move, which means I actually grab a shield in an otherwise very crappy matchup, and now I can just come in with my Gastrodon. I can take a Thunder Punch here, no problem. That's all they have enough energy for, so not worried about that. We now can get the full Mud Slap farm down, and we grabbed a shield in the mid game, which is absolutely massive because in comes Barrel, and look at that, it's another BIBAREL in the back from my opponent. I'm able to overfarm ever so slightly, and now full sending the Hyper Fang here. I don't think there was a single matchup where my opponent didn't go for a Surf Bait in these matchups, but either way, I'm going to shield this up. I have such a dominant matchup in the lead there, so I'm going to go for the full rollout farm down. The opponent does make it to another charge move. I know this is only enough for another Surf, but a Surf from a BIBAREL is going to do more damage than a non-stab Icy Wind from a Drifblim, so I will shield that up, and now they are completely walled in this matchup. I'm able to make it to back-to-back Surfs before my opponent is even able to make it to an Icy Wind, and this is going to put me in a fantastic spot because rollout is super effective. They have to get to the back-to-back in order to win the game, but they end up throwing on the CMP tie, which they lose. I'm able to make it to a third Surf that picks up the knockout on the Drifblim, and we are able to take that win. Gastrodon into another Drifblim. I cannot catch a break on these leads. We had a few good leads, but otherwise all the bad leads in these matchups. The opponent ends up having a Bastiodon in the back. And now this is where it's nice having Metal Sound and Iron Head because at least these are neutral. Of course, it's resisted on Steel, but it's super effective on Rock, which means it's neutral damage. So despite my opponent making a pretty good play of overfarming as much as they could and going for a catch on the Bastiodon, this is still not as bad as it could have been. It looks like my opponent is actually committing to the full Smackdown farm down, and that's going to be really aggressive because Wormadam is extremely bulky and the pacing of Metal Sound is significantly better than my opponent seems to realize. And they can't hold back-to-back charge moves here, so if they throw at the last second like they do here, I can actually shield this up and flip switch because my opponent can't hold back-to-back Stone Edges, and now I get the Metal Sound farm down. So we're actually able to flip switch with a Wormadam Trash against a Bastiodon because they refuse to throw their energy. Back in comes the Drifblim. Drifblim now going to have to take an Iron Head. They've got loads of energy here, so yeah, they actually end up committing the shield on their Shadow Drifblim, but now here comes BIBAREL, a complete wall in the back. It's an Ice Fang Drapion. Now Ice Fang is resisted here, so I end up just farming up to the Surf and firing it off because why not? I may as well connect with a charge move here. I can take the charge move here on my Gastrodon. It is just the Aqua Tail, that's no problem. We get the full Mud Slap farm down, and now my opponent is going to throw some energy here. This is likely to be just an Icy Wind. I can let this go. It is just the Icy Wind, and now going for the full farm down, able to make it to a Water Pulse. This is neutral damage, and this is extremely important because my opponent will be forced to shield here, and if they don't, that puts them in rollout farm down range. And yeah, my opponent knew as soon as that landed, the game was over, so we are able to take that win. Neutral lead in the next match, Gastrodon v Gastrodon. And this time we actually are at energy parity. Both of us had 0 energy to start, which is how the game should work. They end up catching on the Drifblim, which is why you see me always full sending the Water Pulse on these matchups, because lots of opponents try to do that. They try to catch on the Drifblim because no matter what, they're thinking, oh, I'm going to catch a double resisted move no matter what the opponent goes for. But that's why Water Pulse coverage is extremely important in this meta. We now have the alignment that we need. We can put the BIBAREL on the Drifblim. They end up coming in with their third, which is a Spiritomb, but now Spiritomb is going to be met with back-to-back Surfs before they're even able to make it to a charge move or get the full farm down. This Surf will be enough to pick up the knockout unless my opponent commits the shield, which they do. Can I get to another Surf? I cannot, but that's okay, because now all I have to do is align my Wormadam here, and this game is pretty much over. We already have a shield advantage. Even though they have a slight energy advantage here, they can combo play, it doesn't matter. I'll give them their shield back. I don't expect them to bait with a body slam here. And now all I have to do is grab a shield back from my opponent, and this game is pretty much over. I'm going to go for the Bug Buzz. This should be enough to either grab a shield or pick up the knockout. The opponent commits the shield, and now all I have to do is commit a shield back, as long as they don't bait, we're in a pretty good spot. They end up full sending the water pulse. I kind of just have to watch for a catch here. Their switch timer not quite up, able to go for a body slam. This should be enough to pick up the knockout on the Gastrodon, and it is. That's massive. In comes the Spiritomb. Spiritomb will be met with 3 mud slaps and a body slam, and even though this is double resisted damage in the red health range, it picks up the knockout on the Spiritomb, and we are able to take that win. Into the next match, another terrible lead. We're going to safe switch into our BIBAREL this time instead of Wormadam Trash, because Wormadam Trash is a hard wall, whereas they would have super effective coverage here into my BIBAREL, so may as well switch here. I end up grabbing a shield, and then I'm like, you know what? If you full send, so be it. You didn't overfarm that much, but they end up baiting with an Icy Wind, which is actually huge. We get that bait call, and now in comes an Ice Fang Drapion. Ice Fang Drapion will be met with a Shadow Surf from the BIBAREL, and even with the debuff, that still does 50%. Can I make it to a charge move? I cannot. The opponent does have enough for a crunch here, so they will be able to pick up the knockout. And now in comes Gastrodon. Gastrodon, of course, can get the full Mud Sap farm down here, but not before my opponent makes it to another charge move. But I believe this is only enough for an Aqua Tail, and it is. Still in the green health, that is just fine. I'm assuming the Abomasnow is just going to come back in, which is why you see me queuing the switch. And now we have our hard answer here, but it is a Gastrodon in the back. So unfortunately, we have been triple hard walled in this matchup. However, we grabbed a shield in the mid game, and the opponent only farms up to a body slam here, so a bit of a weird play. That is resisted damage, and now I can make it to a bug buzz. I'm actually going to grab a shield from my opponent, so now my opponent has 0 shields left in play. Here comes another bug buzz, and now I just have to shield up any like hard charge moves coming from my opponent. I will respect a potential earth power or water pulse here. It is just going to be another body slam bait, so I'm going to instantly pivot, anticipating my opponent to pivot back out into their Abomasnow, which is exactly what I need, because I need energy on my Wormadam. The opponent does make it to another charge move here. I'm going to let this go. I need energy on the Wormadam. The opponent ends up baiting with an Icy Wind, but that means I can get to a body slam. This will be able to probably pick up the knockout here, or maybe just barely leave them at 1 HP, and it does. They actually get the full farm down, but it does not matter. I should have gotten a Metal Sound through there, which is pretty unfortunate, because that means they're going to get an extra Powder Snow through. But now I should be able to make it to a Iron Head here, but I do not survive it because of that extra Powder Snow. We actually lose that game, potentially due to 1-turn lag. Very close though. Into the next match, Gastrodon v Gastrodon, neutral lead, as neutral as it gets. Most opponents are on Water Pulse as well, but I will let this go because I know I can live a Water Pulse. And it is the body slam bait for my opponent. So now full sending the water pulse here will be nice, because my opponent will either have to commit a shield or let that go and do massive damage. I end up going for a body slam catch on my Wormadam. I don't quite get it. The opponent ends up banking all that energy, coming in with a Drifblim. Now Drifblim will be met with an Iron Head. This Iron Head is neutral damage, but Drifblim is very glassy, so they actually commit the shield, which is a little bit strange because it's not like they're going to go for an Icy Wind against a Wormadam Trash. So they actually overfarm a little bit too much, allowing me to make it to another Iron Head. Now they're finally going to pick up the knockout with the Shadow Ball here, and it does. Where am I going to go from here? I have to come in BIBAREL. BIBAREL will just go for a really aggressive full rollout farm down, but my opponent actually pivots into a BIBAREL of their own, maybe trying to lure the Gastrodon back out. That's kind of my only guess here. But I'm not going to fall for it. I'm going to stay in this matchup. I'm going to connect with another Hyper Fang before my opponent can make it to a second charge move of their own, and then if this doesn't pick up the knockout, that's when I pivot into my Gastrodon to get the catch. My opponent ends up not throwing the Surf, which is massive. Back in comes the Drifblim. Drifblim now will be met with a body slam. This is double resisted damage, but it's a valuable chip, and now I can go for the full Mud Slap farm down, but the opponent gets the KO at the exact same time. But now it's BIBAREL versus a 1 HP Gastrodon. That rollout will go through, which means it should be enough to pick up the knockout on the Gastrodon, and we are able to take that win. Okay, into the next match. Neutral lead, at least we've got here. Gastrodon into Spiritomb. The opponent is going to stay in this matchup. I almost always just called the bait in this matchup because a lot of my opponents went for Rock Tombs. Like, I don't know why, but people just cannot stop themselves from going for Rock Tomb, even when it's resisted in this matchup. I'm guessing it's because They expect the opponent to shield with all of the energy that they just got, but now they end up just giving me switch because of it. In comes a Gastrodon of their own. I'm now able to make it to a Water Pulse. This will do some very solid chip, even with the Rock Tomb debuff. It actually puts them into nearly the yellow health range with that Mud Slap, but I don't have a good answer for Gastrodon in the back. So I'm forced to come in with my BIBAREL here. They end up going for a catch onto their Drapion. They're unsuccessful, but I can make it to a Surf and chip here before pivoting into my Wormadam, which has an already dominant matchup against the Drapion. Even if they make it to back-to-back crunches here, I can survive them. So there's crunch number one. Yeah, 20% chance. Right, they get it every single time somehow. That actually does grab the debuff, which means this puts me deep into the red. But fortunately for me, Poison Stings are double resisted, so even with the debuff, they have no ability really to farm me down, even in the red health range here, unless they pivot back into their Gastrodon, but that's fine, because now Gastrodon will be met with a Surf. They end up throwing on the CMP tie, losing the CMP tie. Surf picks up the knockout on the Gastrodon, and now we have 2 shields left in play. So I don't really care how much energy this Drapion has. I think they only have enough for an Aqua Tail here. I don't even care. I'm shielding it up. I'm just going to go for the Surf. This is only enough for, once again, another Aqua Tail, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to shield this up. I have a charge move loaded. I believe BIBAREL wins CMP against Drapion as well. So Surf will be enough to pick up the knockout on the Drapion, and we are able to take that win. Okay, into the final match of the video, Gastrodon into Gliscor. I cannot escape the Flyers with Gastrodon on the lead today. I'm going to pivot into my Wormadam, and the opponent doesn't switch into anything, so maybe weak to Wormadam and the back. Worried about the coverage here, but they end up coming in with a Magnezone, so a bit of a strange play. I am able to make it to a Bug Buzz now. This is only single resisted as opposed to Iron Head, which would be double resisted, and that actually does some really solid damage. However, my opponent is able to farm up to the back-to-back Wild Charges here, so I kind of just have to take this. Wild Charge number 1 picks up the knockout. Wild Charge number 2 is resisted here. It's only single resisted, but it will do some very solid chip. That 1 Mud Slap picks up the knockout. In comes BIBAREL. They do have enough for an Earthquake here, so I actually will shield this up. What's it going to be? It's going to be the full send of the Earthquake, so massive shield. And what is in the back? None other than an Ice Fang Drapion. Drapion now will be met with a Surf, and because their pacing is a lot worse here, oh, my opponent lets that go. Kind of an interesting play, maybe hoping they can save the shields for Gliscor, and Gliscor can win this game for them, but that allows me to get the full rollout farm down, come out with back-to-back Surfs loaded. Now this game is pretty much over, because once I fire off Surf number 1, I can bank the second one, and all I have to do here is make it to a Body Slam before my opponent can knock me out. They do actually get to a charge move here, but I do not believe they have enough for an Earthquake. It is just the Aerial Ace. We actually survived that on 1 HP. Had they been on Fury Cutter instead of Sand Attack, we might have not been able to survive that, but we grabbed the shield, and with the Surf loaded, we win this game. Oh my god, I actually got 1 turn lag there, so if my opponent had the charge move loaded, we would have lost, even though we would have won CMP. And yeah, we are still able to take that win, even though the game state is very, very bad. Yeah, I mean, even with me doing the like Elim trick where I like slightly minimize the app and then go back in, I can minimize the amount of 1 turn lag by like 90%. I'm definitely cutting them down a huge amount, but still that 10%, it doesn't work. I mean, they seriously need to fix this game. It's truly incredible that they haven't fixed any of these bugs that have been in the game for years. I'm guessing their development team is just, they're just not good at what they do, but that's a whole other story. So yeah, I think Shadow of BIBAREL was a really cool pick, and the core between Gastrodon and BIBAREL was pretty interesting. And Wormadam Trash worked as a really solid save switch, able to flip switch a couple times, but more often than not, at least grab shields and set up BIBAREL in the end game. Plus, Wormadam and Gastrodon both fairly bulky, which means I could save those shields for my BIBAREL and just kind of sweep end games with it. But yeah, that's going to be it for me from this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, peace.